here state.
It was a bad time for agriculture.
It was bad. It was just terrible times. Nothing
One
was working.
decision we made was that we were not gonna hide it from the kids. We brought them in and let them know what was going on, and because a lot of people tried to put on the happy face, in front of their kids, but, and they understood, and they would pep us up at times, so it was good that they do.
Yeah.
And Charles was 15, and Kista would have been 11. And so I went back, we saw Jan and talked things over. Well, when I got home, I started thinking, okay, how can I do it? Well, all the ground was rented, and I had the power of attorney for all the landlords. And so I turned around, I didn't ask the attorney, I just did it. I made Charles the operator at 15 and opened his bank account, and then we custom farmed for him, and we got paid whatever it made. In other words, it was just a paper transfer thing, but it was all legal. It was all set up legally. Went back to see Jan Hamilton, and he says, "You what?" He said, "Can a 15-year-old farm?" I said, "Well, yeah, they do it all the time." He says, "I didn't know that." And so then he looked at the loans and that, and he said, "Is your banker of sound mind?" And I said, "Well, I think so, but he says, well, he said he's not done a very good job." And so through negotiations, took some time in there, but we had to sell our machinery. But the security agreement on the machinery said farm machinery. Didn't list it, no serial numbers, just farm machinery. So Jan said, "Here's the test, John. I want you to take whatever you use to farm, not cattle, not anything else, but to farm, take it to town." And so we did. And, and so we didn't file bankruptcy, but if we had, we would have got to exempt things. And so we got to have, I think we got $13,000 exempted that we could buy back. So we did. And Carolyn and I and Charles and Kista went to the sale. And it was as if we had the plague. When we would walk here, the crowd just moved away because they all knew. And it was all right. I had one guy come up and says, "Well, I'd kind of like to have that piece of equipment. Are you going to need it?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going to need it." He said, "I won't bid on it." And my neighbor, just to the east of the farm, George, he tried to buy it all before it got sold at auction. So he was a real good friend. But two farmers came to our rescue, Bill Barger and Glenn Mull. And of course, they were a distance from the farm. They weren't next door neighbors, but they were good friends, and they helped. Loaned us equipment, and which was good, which was very appreciative. And we went to the sale. We bought back $13,000 worth of stuff.
And John went on a journey trying to find old equipment just to get us through.
In the shelter belts.
In the shelter belts, yes.
Yeah.
Which reminds me of Old Tank.
Oh, God, yeah. Oh, we had to sell it. I had a four-wheel drive tractor. We had to sell it. And I had an M&M without a cab on it, and I bought it back. But at the sale, I needed more than one tractor. There was this M&M that I have no idea how old it was, but it was on propane. And it wasn't very powerful. I don't know, 40 horsepower maybe. But I could afford it. And so I bought it, and we called it Tank. And Eric.
And Annie Pearl helped out too.
Yes, Annie Pearl called me. Now, Annie, we got the word from the bank on the 13th of December. Andy Tott was coming out from Kansas City to spend Christmas with us. And so we got her, and she came, and she was sitting right here, and I was sitting over there. And so we were explaining to her what had happened to us. And I says, "Annie Tott, you went through the 30s. You've experienced people going broke." She says, "I don't think I ever knew anybody as broke as you're broke."
Oh, no.
And so, Annie Pearl, they got a ton of money. So she gets back, tells Annie Pearl calls me, what do we do, John? And I says, well, right now, nothing. I said, because they would have. And then later I called her back and I said, we're going to auction. I said, I need my combine and the grain cart back. Could you buy that back for me? And then I'll buy it back from you. And so they bought the combine and the grain cart. And we had a Minneapolis, two minis. One of them was tank. And God, we farmed with crap. I mean, I found stuff in shelter belts that nobody was using, and so I just adopted it. The goal was to get a crop planted in the fall of '85, because then you got a government payment, and that would get us on. That would take us through the winter. And I didn't have to sell my cattle. The bank didn't have anything on the cattle. So the attorney, Jan Hamilton, told me, he said, sell the cattle and put that in a different bank. And he says, don't use that to do much with, but he says, use it sparingly. So I sold all the cattle, put that money in the other bank that Kent didn't have anything with, and was very frugal. Carolyn went to work. We owned a fourth of the butcher block, which is a meat processing plant out here. Carolyn went to work there under crazy conditions, but but that's for another story. But she worked out there, and the kids were good. One Carolyn mentioned that we wanted our kids to know what happened. One morning, Kista was sitting there, right there where you're at, Rick, and she says, Mom, Dad, you're having a pity party and nobody's coming. Quit it.
Good for her.
And she was right.
Yeah.
11 years old.
Yeah.
And so we made it through all that, and boy, I mean, you look at where we're at today, and it's an amazing story. So, good friends, Harold Young, they went broke, and they were mad. Harold was mad. Me, I just wanted to get it over, figured out how to do it.
Get through the storm.
Yeah, just,
Yeah, get through the storm.
and survive. Harold was mad. And so they left for Dallas, Texas, to move to Dallas, Texas. And he farmed about 6 or 7 quarters, and so he rented it to us, knowing that we were going to lose parts of it or all of it. And but it helped, and we farmed it, and we got through that. We put Milo on 1 quarter, and then the bank got that quarter, and they got my Milo crop. But I had a contract written, and the banker was, it's what happens when you have friends in the banking world in your hometown. And the guy that was the president of the bank was a real turkey. And so I said, well, I've got the rights to harvest it. Okay, we'll let you harvest it. But the ground, we've taken over the ground. Well, and the next thing I knew, there was a combine in there harvesting it. And I called, Gene Dykeman was his name. I said, Gene, well, no, we're just hauling to the elevator. We won't sell it. And the elevator guy was a good friend, Galen Wilson. And so I said, okay. And so they put the elevator. Story is they sold it without, and kept the money. So I got Bruce Gatterman, who's a partner with Phil Martin. Bruce Gatterman became our attorney, and I sued the First State Bank. And Glee Smith was on the board, and he was a politician and a state senator, and his didn't stink and all that. And here, I sued him. Carol and I sued him for the damages on that. Well, we had him, and Bruce, that's what happens when you have a hometown lawyer fighting a hometown bank. And Bruce says, John, let's settle. And I said, oh hell, I don't want to. No, he says, let's settle. So they settled by giving me part of the mile price, the money. But Glee Smith used to be my friend, became a real enemy, which didn't bother me. That was all right. But you learned about hometown bankers and hometown lawyers, and you don't want to work in that situation. But anyway, so we survived that. And we farmed Harold's ground. Today, we own most of it by different reasons and herefores and wheres. We've bought it, or our cousins have bought it. It's good ground, and that helped us survive. And then in the meantime, why good things happened to us. We were frugal, and we made some money, and so the 80s were better for us. After our we went broke. We didn't file bankruptcy. We just went broke. And the banker told me one time, he says, "You're just broke. You just don't have any money, but that won't last long." And he was right. Buzz Reed told me that, and he was right. But we helped others. It was interesting during that time period. Of course, we spent time at the church and gotten involved with the New Covenant Church. And the pastor Dwayne Kirshner, was praying with us. And he really knew when to call at the right moment. And he'd call. And it was always when we needed it the worst, And what uplifting that was. And that's when I got to know Jesus personally. And so, good things happened to us during that time period, even though we really didn't know it. And we ended up, the only one that really lost any money on us was the bank. Everybody else that we owed money, we got them paid. But the bank, and I told Ken, I said, well, damn it, your name's on the loan just like mine. And they wanted me to do crazy things, but I didn't do them. And we still talk. When I see him, I don't see him very often. He lost the bank in the meantime. But we got into the 90s. And I got the combine and grain cart paid off. And we got into the 90s, and farming was a little bit better in the 90s, and so forth. And so we just kept plugging away. I can't remember a lot of the 90s and in the early time period. But then Grandpa Bob died in about 92, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's about right. And that was a loss, because he was a real mentor for me. I lost Dad in 78, and that was kind of a bad time period, but Dad and I probably didn't have the best of relationships as we maybe should have had. I had a better relationship with Grandpa Bob, really. He was a mentor. He really was. And so he
you like the same things, cattle,
yeah. He said vest in land. And then we lost Esther, Carol's mom, in...
Oh, boy. I got to go look. I forget.
I don't know. Anyway, we lost her. But so here we have the Haas heirs farm coming from the Haases. But when Esther died, here was Carolyn's side coming to our side. And Esther owned a half section called the Nieper half section, and she owned out here where the house was. We call it the Jost Quarter, and we inherited some money, and so then now you've got the combining of the Haases, literally combining of the Haases and the Jost, or the Bergs. Really, it was the Bergs.
Yeah.
And that was really the combining. What we farm today is because of both. We sold the half
The
section.
nucleus.
Yeah, we sold the half section that Grandma had of grass, and with that money, I turned around and bought another quarter that we're farming, and we farm the Jost quarter, and it's a beautiful piece of ground. And so all of a sudden, we really were united. And it's kind of a neat story, I think, in that, and it's worked.
Yeah.
I mean, it's worked. We're very fortunate today. And today, Charlie came back to the farm, first as a seed company, and then and he always helped when he had time. And in 2014, I told Charlie, we're riding in the pickup, and I said, Charlie, it's time that we throw it all together and split it down the middle. That was in 14. I'd have been 90, I've been 74, not 90, 74. And he said, well, it sounded like a deal to him. And so I went down and opened a bank account with Haas Farms Joint Venture, got a tax number, and we were in business.
Yep.
And it was just, it just worked. We started out with my machinery. And then pretty soon we bought machinery together, half and half, so we had our machinery. And the first thing Charlie bought on his own was a tractor. And now, in 2024, and it was started before that, but now all the new stuff Charlie buys. So we went mine, ours, Charlie. And it's been a progression with that. Well, farm size-wise, we farmed the young ground, and that helped us, and that increased in size. And then during that time period, Annie Pearl, Uncle Hunter bought a quarter of ground, and so we farmed that. And then they pass on, and Brett and Tracy, which are Bruce Davis's kids, they like ground, and so they have bought ground. And Charlie's wife's family bought some ground. And then Charlie's wife's uncle bought some ground. I mean, but it ended up, we farmed basically family ground with the exception of a half section and an 80 that belonged to a lady, was April Dittman, now it's April Neal Palatano. Dittman is a brother to Jack, so I've known the family, and she loves us. She lives in Florida and Maine, part-time, different times, and it's good ground. And so our ground is family held, so it's pretty good shape. We've added to it. Charlie has added to his. And so today we farm 6,000 acres. And it's a combination of Berg and Haas. Pretty good combination.
Yeah.
And the combination was pretty good.
Fruitful.
It really did. It turned out Charlie and Kista and then their grandkids, 6 grandkids. And so it's interesting. The Haas side is I know more about the Haas side because I grew up in it than I do the Berg side. But that's how we got to where we're at today.
And now Charles is involving his kids.
Yeah.
Macy worked out one summer. She drove the combine and did everything. Maggie did last summer, and Ethan, of course, has worked, I don't know how many summers.
Ethan's an interesting story because he worked for a contractor during high school, and then he's gone to college. He's studying agriculture technology management, and he's had 3 different internships. I think he would like to go to work for BTI, the John Deere dealer in Great Bend. With the thought that he might come back, and that's all to be determined down the road. But today Charlie is 54 and Kista is 50. We've got Macy is in Uzbekistan with her husband and the little girl, Lily. And how old is Lily? 7 months? 6
Yeah.
months? 6 months, I think we decided.
And Ethan is a senior at K-State, and Maggie's a junior in high school. And then on the Holt side, Catherine is a junior at Emporia, Abby's a freshman at
KU.
KU, and then Olivia's an 8th grader. So
And-
we're down to 2 in high school here,
Yeah.
or down to 2 is
Yeah.
in school here.
But it's been fun for Carolyn and I to be involved with our kids here in Larned and our
It's
grandkids.
amazing that they would stick
We've seen a
around.
lot of tennis matches.
You know, there's a lot more farm stories that I could tell.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
The house in Hutchison, is that the same house that Tot lived in?
Yep.
Okay.
Red brick house
Been there many times.
on 15th
Had
and
many
Elm.
Thanksgivings there.
15th and Elm.
Yep, I know exactly where it's at.
And
It was a nice house, neat house. It was
they,
neat.
Grandpa
We've gone
bought,
by it a couple of times.
yeah, Grandpa bought that. I thought the yard was bigger because I can remember with the Davises, me and Jim and Bruce playing football between the garage and the house. And when we went by it the last time, I thought, how in the world did we do that? It's not very wide. It's gotten smaller. They
smaller then.
moved together.
Well, I'm gonna pause here and